Number 3, blackmail gate. Britain's newspaper, The Independent, reports that the Iraqi government is not as interested in the so-called strategic alliance with us as Mr. Bush and Secretary Rice have suggested. In fact, they're not interested in having 50 American military bases there, pretty much till the end of time. But conveniently, the paper says we're blackmailing them. There is $20 billion worth of outstanding American court judgments against Iraq. But there's a presidential order immunizing Iraq from those claims, all of which date back to the Saddam Hussein dictatorship. The Independent reports that if the Iraqis don't agree to the strategic alliance, Mr. Bush will end the immunity. And since the Iraqi government has $50 billion in the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, it wouldn't have any chance of keeping the $20 billion out of the jurisdictions of the U.S. courts. Number 2, the president may not be rational gate. Comedian Rush Limbaugh dropping in a little aside about Iran. I had talked to a bunch of his donors, and they said to me that they can't see Bush leaving office with Iran still a problem, a nuclear problem. He's not out of office yet either. You doubt that the implication there is war with Iran, or if he can't fool some of the people on that one again, bomb Iranian nuclear facilities, then check out the next one. Number 1, the president may not be rational gate. In General Ricardo Sanchez's new book, Wiser in Battle, there is contained his story of watching in horror on a teleconference after 4 contractors were killed in Fallujah in 2004. Sanchez said Mr. Bush's pep talk to the generals was confused, to say the least. Kick ass. If somebody tries to stop the march to democracy, we will seek them out and kill them. We must be tougher than hell. This Vietnam stuff, this is not even close. It is a mindset. We can't send that message. It's an excuse to prepare us for the withdrawal. This is a series of moments, and this is one of them. Our will is being tested, but we are resolute. We have a better way. Stay strong. Stay the course. Kill them. Be confident. Prevail. We are going to wipe them out. We are not blinking. What is your major malfunction? Good Lord, he used every platitude and cliche in there except Mama said knock you out and employees must wash hands. Bush. Number 3, war profiteering gate. Wondering why Senator McCain wants to stay in Iraq? It's all part of the contract. The State Department revealing it is working up contracts with the Iraqi government, deals between U.S. firms, even the Defense Department itself, to provide mentors to Iraqi defense officials, to establish a marshals system for Iraqi courts, to provide translators, and to build new prisons. They are multi-year contracts. And number 2, still the campaign issue gate. Senator Lindsey Graham addressing the last major campaign event before he faces a challenge in a primary in South Carolina on the 10th. At a state GOP convention, he invoked President Bush's visit to Spartanburg, paused for the requisite applause, and instead heard crickets. Silencio. Nada. From the Republicans. At which point Graham nodded, indicating you're supposed to applaud here, which the Republicans then did. And number 1, you're out of order. The whole trial is out of order. They're out of order gate. The judge at Gitmo, Army Colonel Peter Brownback, had threatened to suspend the trial of detainee Omar Qadir until prosecutors gave the defense access to potential evidence. So on Friday, Colonel Brownback suddenly stopped being the judge at the Qadir trial. Army Colonel Patrick Parrish is the new judge. Well, you know what they say about a trial. If you're losing, it's not like you can change all 25 witnesses. You have to change the judge. No, sorry, that's about a baseball team going badly. Sorry. Bushed. And it's an all nexus of terror and politics gate edition. Number 3, Newt Gingrich at a book signing outside New York City. Asked why there have been no terrorist attacks since 9/11. Answered, I honestly don't know. I would have expected another attack. Don't worry, the clarity passed. This is, he suddenly corrected himself, one of the great tragedies of the Bush administration. The more successful they've been at intercepting and stopping bad guys, the less proof there is that we're in danger. It's almost like they should every once in a while have allowed an attack to get through just to remind us. This guy Gingrich, is he an American or a terrorist? I can never keep it straight. Number 2, the Pentagon prosecutors planning out the trials of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 4 other detainees at Gitmo who've just picked the starting date, September 15th. 10 days after the Republican convention nominates John McCain, 50 days before the election. Coincidence, no doubt. And number one, the SIT Intel Group, SITE, which has posted this startling bit of computer imagery, which it says it found on two password-protected websites, believed to be affiliated with Al-Qaeda. The terrorists' goal, SITE Intel claimed, of what Washington, D.C. should look like after an Islamic nuclear attack on the U.S. No, actually, it's from the video game Fallout 3, produced not by Al-Qaeda, but by Bethesda Softworks of Maryland, which advertises itself as America's first choice in post-nuclear simulation. And one of these quasi-governmental terror think tanks couldn't tell the difference. Game over, man! Bushed. Number three, Planegate. It may be over in the courts, but not in the Congress. And this is not just about Scott McClellan's new book, although Chairman Henry Waxman of the House Oversight Committee says its revelations open up new folds to the case. He also reports that his committee has just been provided with an edited version of the FBI interview with Scooter Libby, in which the commuted lawbreaker said it's possible that he was instructed by Vice President Cheney to leak to the press about Valerie Plame and her CIA work. Number two, change the judge gate. We told you about this one on Monday, with the military judge at Gitmo prepared to suspend the trial of a Canadian detainee because his captors would not give his lawyers access to evidence. The judge, Colonel Peter Brownback, was suddenly dismissed and replaced by another judge. The chief judge at Gitmo now says it isn't how it appears. Colonel Brownback was supposed to retire from active service at the end of this month, so they made the change now, even though it isn't the end of the month. Even though Brownback said he was willing to stay on the case for as long as it was needed. It was based, said Colonel Ralph Coleman, on a number of manpower management considerations, which, according to the English to Military Ease Dictionary, translates as, it's exactly how it appears. And number one, appeasement gate. You will recall the president leading a brief and largely unsuccessful attempt to link Senator Obama to a policy of appeasement, specifically relating to Iran. The president went for the full H, comparing Obama's willingness to talk to Iran to the appeasement of Hitler and reading his speech at the Israeli Knesset. Well, there's some bad news for Mr. Bush tonight. The ally in whom he is most deeply invested, the leader of a vital nation in a troubled part of the world, has just gone to talk to another nation led by tyrants. The nation he will talk to is Iran. The leader doing the talking is Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki of Iraq. That's correct. By Mr. Bush's definition, his man in Iraq, for whose government 4,100 Americans have died, is himself the equivalent of a Nazi appeaser. Bush. Number three, Idolgate. American Idol's executive producer Nigel Lythgoe tells OK Magazine that they didn't want to have the president on the show this year as part of the annual anti-poverty fundraising special because they were embarrassed and disappointed by his efforts to combat poverty. So why did they have him on? The White House insisted because Senators Obama and Clinton were going to be on. Quote, the president is always saying, I want to be on. Well, sir, we all wish at some point you had been on, too. Number two, the real Republican agenda gate. In the Senate yesterday, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell accused Democrats of breaking their promise to confirm a number of presidential judicial nominations. To punish the Dems, McConnell used Senate rules to waste virtually the whole day, having the Senate clerk read the bill under consideration, a global warming bill, aloud, all 491 pages of it. Why? A Republican lobbyist leaked an internal GOP strategy memo to the Democrats. Quote, the GOP very much wants to have this fight, engage in it for a prolonged period, and then make it as difficult as possible to move off the bill. Why? Quote, the focus is much more on making political points than in amending the bill, changing the baseline text for any future debate, or affecting policy. Making not policy, but political points the goal of Mr. Bush's party. And you thought they weren't good at anything. Number one, appeasement gate. Again, while John McCain and George Bush run around making the unprecedented assertions that talking with enemies amounts to appeasing them, we now have some new additions to the list of the traitorous talkers, in addition to yesterday's revelation that Iraqi Prime Minister Maliki was one of them because he was going to go talk to Iran. Who are the new appeasers? President George H.W. Bush, for one, who convinced Syria's Hafez Assad to support the first Gulf War. That was a fact pointed out in an op-ed today by yet another appeaser calling for talks with Syria now, Republican Senator and decorated combat vet Chuck Hagel.
At the gas pump gate. President Bush taking a page from the McCain campaign showing utter cluelessness in how to bring gas prices down. Today, Bush urged Congress to expand oil drilling in Alaska and offshore. And if Congress doesn't, he says it's their responsibility to explain why to their constituents. Actually, Mr. President, it's your responsibility to explain how on earth increased drilling could lower gas prices anytime soon. More oil does not magically turn into more gas. More oil turns into more gas only when we do more refining. The oil refineries we have are running at capacity. We are at capacity because your oil buddies have been using any excuse they can to close refineries so they can pad their profits. Number 2, Environmental Protection Agency gate. 15 months ago, the Supreme Court ordered the EPA to determine whether greenhouse gases harm humans. 6 months ago, the EPA had a written report ready to go that said global warming indeed harms humans. The White House blocked that report. 3 weeks ago, the EPA was prepared to say the Clean Air Act is workable and effective. But today, the EPA released its report. No finding on whether greenhouse gases harms humans, ignoring the Supreme Court. And that Clean Air Act that was okay last month, it's apparently no good now. Who could possibly be behind the notion that it's okay to ignore the highest court in the land and also to discredit the Clean Air Act? Anonymous officials inside the EPA say it's all the work of Dick Cheney's office. No way. And number 1, EPA Gate, the sequel. The agency values your life at $6.9 million. Sounds good, right? Well, actually, that figure is down $1 million. You were worth nearly $8 million just 5 years ago. It all may seem a little random, but the government actually uses this figure to calculate the cost-benefit analysis of whether it's worth trying to save your life, whether a regulation with a safety benefit is worth its cost. So, for instance, it's cheaper to let you die from global warming than to pay the cost of cutting back on greenhouse gas emissions. So in this election season, when anyone asks you if you're better off now than you were 8 years ago, literally, according to your government, you can tell them you're worth $1 million fewer dollars than you used to be. Bushed. Number 3, Timetable Gate. The UN mandate for the presence of U.S. troops in Iraq expires at the end of this year, and Iraq is not hot to renew that. So if that UN mandate expires, what's the new legal basis for U.S. troops staying in Iraq? Well, the White House wants a long-term country-to-country agreement between us and the Iraqis. The Iraqis so far are also not so hot on that idea. And today, the Iraqi Prime Minister went one step further. Mr. Bush, for years, had told us that Democrats would help the terrorists by setting a timetable for U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. But the Iraqi Prime Minister today said Iraq is, quote, looking at the necessity of terminating the foreign presence on Iraqi lands, end quote. He said either the U.S. should agree to depart from Iraq or should agree to a timetable by which we will agree to depart. Remember last May when our president said if the Iraqis ask us to leave, we'll leave? Can we hold him to that? Number 2, Injustice Gate. The Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility has the job of policing the Justice Department's 10,000 lawyers. Under Janet Reno, Justice began releasing the results of that office's internal investigations, exonerating some prosecutors, revealing when others crossed the line. The Los Angeles Times has investigated how the Office of Professional Responsibility has done its job during a time of wall-to-wall controversy, when federal prosecutors have been involved in interrogation policy, wiretapping policy, allegations of political prosecutions, and more. They found that unlike the Reno years, the Gonzales-Mukasey Justice Department won't say whether a single prosecutor did anything out of bounds in any of those scandals. In fact, it was only last month that the office released its mandatory annual public report for 2005. And number 1, Slow Learner Gate. During the Clinton-Bush presidential transition, Mr. Clinton and his top aides told Mr. Bush and his top aides that al-Qaeda would be and should be priority number 1. Mr. Bush ignored them, to our bottomless regret. Now Mr. Bush has weighed in on his successor's big problem. Not Iraq, but Pakistan. Pakistan, home of al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda now back to its pre-9/11 strength, plotting its next attacks in a Pakistani safe haven that was created in a stunning act of appeasement, approved and defended by President Bush. Bushed. Number 3, G8 Gate. At the Group of 8 summit, the U.S. background material for the media included a bio of Italian Premier Silvio Berlusconi that referred to him as one of the most controversial leaders of a country known for corrupt governments. The bio said Berlusconi himself had been accused of corruption. Today, the White House apologized. But wait, there's more. Everything in the bio was factual, straight from the Encyclopedia of World Biography. But the White House didn't just apologize for giving reporters factually correct material. They also said that the, quote, sentiments of the bio, things like the fact that Berlusconi has been accused of corruption, they said those things do not represent the views of President Bush or of us, the American people. At least now they're admitting he doesn't believe in facts. I think they should stay away from saying the same thing about us, though. Number 2, blowing smoke gate. Last October, White House spokeswoman Dana Perino rejected claims that the White House eviscerated prepared congressional testimony by the Centers for Disease Control about the harmful effects of global warming on human health. Why is that an important political issue? Well, the Supreme Court has ruled that if carbon dioxide poses a health danger, it has to be regulated under the Clean Air Act. Now, we know who in the White House decided to put carbon dioxide before humans. Surprise! Dick Cheney. In a letter obtained by the AP, the former senior EPA advisor on climate change says Cheney's office was involved in killing nearly half the original CDC testimony, so the CDC's health findings would not oblige the government to crack down on carbon emissions. And number 1, scare us but don't protect us gate. The deadliest bombing in Kabul since the fall of the Taliban killed 41 people yesterday. Today, the Afghan Interior Ministry implied that the bombing was carried out with the help of Pakistan's intelligence agency. The Pakistanis are already being blamed for an April assassination attempt on Afghanistan's president and a prison break that freed hundreds of Taliban fighters last month. The Afghan government is even threatening to send its troops over the border into Pakistan to fight the Taliban there. Why are the Taliban in Pakistan? Because our great ally, Pakistan, has signed a series of ceasefire agreements with militant groups, effectively creating a safe haven there for the Taliban as well as al-Qaeda. In other words, the Pakistanis are supporting the Taliban and the guys who attacked us on 9/11, just like they were before 9/11. Only now, thanks to the Bush administration, they're doing it with the help of billions of dollars in American aid. Your war on terror tax dollars at work. Bushed. Number 3. I can make a hat, a brooch, a pterodactyl gate. The Washington Times, of all papers, complains about a new proposed airplane security measure that's caught the eye of officials at the Department of Homeland Security. It's called the EMD safety bracelet. Safety, yay. But what's EMD stand for? Would you believe electromuscular disruption? That's right. Officials at Homeland Security are considering requiring all airplane passengers to wear a bracelet, which, if activated by the flight crew, electromuscularly disrupts you. I said seat back in the upright position. Number 2, enemies at the gate. After Iran tested missiles last night, John McCain responded in part by singing the praises of the Bush administration's newly signed deal for a missile defense radar thingy in the Czech Republic. Missile defense is one of those big, expensive, glitchy weapon systems that's supposed to make you feel safe. This one, however, has Russia threatening to start a war over it. Russia told the Czechs today if they ratify the missile defense radar thingy with us, Russia will respond, quote, not through diplomatic, but through military technical methods, end quote. Feeling safer yet? And number 1, Katrina Trailersgate. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee today released a report which finds that manufacturers knew there were high levels of formaldehyde in the trailers they sold to the government to house victims of Hurricane Katrina. Republicans on the committee released their own report dissenting. Do Republicans claim the formaldehyde levels were not high, or even that the trailer makers didn't know about it? Nope. Even though one company made $500 million on the deal and didn't tell anyone the results of its own formaldehyde testing, the Republicans blame the government for not having an official standard of how much formaldehyde you can make your customers breathe. Funny, when Democrats do want those standards, the Republicans usually say, you're regulating us to death.